I'm going to pick up a rock or two, a flint, to see if there's a chance of a crayfish. And they literally used to be under almost all of them. No, but I can see a caddisfly larvae. I would say there's not much here. Oh, yes. What's that? Some shrimps and some water beetles and a snail. Yeah, lovely water snail. I could go on for a very long time because I love this sort of thing.
Janet Marsh is a passionate artist and nature lover. She first documented the wilds along England's Itchen River in her beautifully illustrated nature diary, published in 1979. Now, more than 4 decades later, in her flat beside the River Thames in London, Janet explains how her delight in little rivers began.
I was a teenager of 14 when I first visited the valley. My father was a dead keen fisherman, so he was in his camouflage. But soon I didn't want to fish, or I didn't want to fish, and I still don't, but I did like to draw. And so I had hours and hours of time to observe the wildlife. I took to a little boat, a sort of blow-up boat, on the carrier and watched water voles and did lots of drawings.
Mongabay returned with Janet to the Itchen in the south of England 43 years after the publication of her diary. We were there to see how biodiversity has fared in a valley that has seen a great deal of what humans call progress. She recalls with pleasure her animal encounters from decades ago.
After a while, I decided to look for more toads in the carrier, just outside their chosen mating area. I was both horrified and amazed on looking down to see a huge tripe by my feet with its mouth wide open. It was shaking a large female toad slowly from side to side and was holding her tightly with its needle-sharp teeth. The trout having gripped her belly, the toad was now quite dead, her long legs trailing in the water. The fish slowly moved away, swimming upstream with its prize to the opposite bank. The male toads, just a few feet away, were to be disappointed. But I had learned and seen something I would never forget. This was the first drawing, and in fact at this stage I hadn't even thought about a diary.
In the 1970s, the government announced it was going to extend a large motorway, the M3, including the building of a bridge across the Itchen River. Janet tried to stop it, along with local conservationist Roger Harrison.
The motorway should have gone on the far side of Winchester, but there were estate owners who were able to, I think, stand in the way of that placing of the motorway in a much more powerful way than the general public and the Janet Marshes. And actually, I mean, where it went, looked at in retrospect, was entirely wrong.
Today, the roar of the motorway can be heard along much of the river. But it turned out that the noisy road wasn't the biggest threat to the Itchen. Other forms of pollution have impacted wildlife more heavily.
I used to see, in fact, when I walked down here originally, there used to be the great sort of plots of water voles, and there were lots of them. And they'd have their home in the bank, and then they sit outside and eat their grass. And you could draw them. There were so many, but I haven't seen one today, and I haven't seen one for a long time.
Many other animals, including lapwings, suffered heavy losses over the decades, as waterkeeper Patrick Moyle recalls.
Yeah, the lapwings, which you used to see apparently out in the fields behind us here, but I think those times are long gone for some reason. But that seems to be all over with that species of bird. Quite rare now.
One species that has bucked the downward trend is the river otter.
Recent years we've had otters return here, which I've seen on 3 or 4 occasions. You've seen evidence of where they've been, but you don't see them that often.
The background to it is that there were no otters in the central south of England at all in the 1970s and 80s, because DDT, the chemical, had really removed them. That was nothing else had removed them. And 25 years ago, we had 2 bitches and a dog otter, and they came here and they had to be made aware of outdoor life for a little while, so there was a cage up here. They're very nocturnal creatures, but these ones were used to the daytime, and so they were out for people in their cage, for people to look at during the day. But within a week or 2, they became very nocturnal.
It's not the motorway, Roger says, that has done the most damage, but rather unregulated activity on the river itself. That's the same sort of harm that's been seen on little rivers the world over in recent decades.
We still have on the upper river 2 fish farms, and the lower one, I think the upper one is the same. It produces 200 tons of trout a year, and in order to do that, it has to feed about 280 tons of dry matter to the fish, and that means that about 80 tons, or 1.5 tons a week, of fish feces are going into the river from each of those farms. But the other thing that is absolutely conspicuous is the collapse in the invertebrate life in the river because of the pollution. And that, to give you an example of exactly how bad that is, an adjacent river here, which isn't below Alresford and doesn't have fish farm or whatever on it, the normal count of the shrimp, which is a small shrimp that swims on its side, very instantly identifiable. If you take a net and do a 3-minute kick sample and catch everything you can in the river and count it out afterwards, you should, in the headwaters of a chalk stream, where it's unaffected by pollution, get about 4,000 gammas, and the highest numbers have been twice that. I mean, it's just voluminous. Here I can't get more than about 200 or 250 now. The water companies, which were privatised 40 years ago, have never put mains drainage into the village. That means that a village has 1,000 people living in it, entirely uses septic tanks. I don't think very many of the people who have those houses and septic tanks actually know that the septic tanks only take the solids out and take absolutely zero of the chemicals.
But Roger thinks there's still time to turn the situation around.
The problems that we have here could be resolved if there was a serious will on the part of the Environment Agency to resolve them.
I think nature is very resilient, but we can't take too much water for ourselves and for agriculture from the rivers. When the water table goes down, all the eggs around the river dry out, and then the fish have not much food. I brought my children up to love river life. They always lived on the river. Really lovely. So my elder son fishes, and he's rather like my father's.
In future, the little rivers of the world will likely continue to rely on local stewards who cherish these pastoral landscapes and campaign to keep them safe and thriving.